Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are in Love's Kitchen ATL. I am excited to be back with you today. My name is Charlton Rhodes. I'm a licensed mental health therapist based in Atlanta, Georgia. And today I have a very special guest that is based down in Tampa, Florida. I'm going to let her introduce herself. Go ahead and tell everyone about yourself, Miss Tiny.
Hello, my name is Tanny. I am a healthcare provider in Tampa, Florida, and I wanted to talk a little bit today about attachment styles.
Yes, this is one of my favorite topics lately in therapy that has come up in individual and couples work. Attachment styles, attachment theory. Um, there's a lot that I've learned and I'm still learning, and I'm going to share some of the things that go into the attachment theory. But Miss Tanny, if you could just give everyone your personal story on how you discovered the attachment theory and the different styles.
Okay, basically, post-divorce, I ended
Okay.
up getting into a serious relationship,
Hmm.
and I really wanted marriage.
Hmm.
We ended up breaking up and I moved on because we didn't get married. And he decided to come back and ask me to marry him.
Hmm.
That was something that I really, really wanted.
Okay.
Yeah,
Lucky you.
right. And, but when he asked me, I literally froze. I was scared. I felt like I couldn't do it. I was even confused by this because I knew how much I wanted it before and for it to be presented to me and for me not to accept it shocked me.
Hmm. Hmm.
I didn't understand what was going on. I started like Googling, right?
Hmm.
Like what would cause this? Where did this come from? And attachment theory kind of came up. I ran into a site called the Attachment Project.
Okay.
.com, yeah. And I took a quiz basically
Hmm.
because they had a quiz on there that asked for your attachment style,
Hmm.
and that's the first time I heard about it, and the first time I learned what mine was,
Okay.
which is disorganized, by the way.
Okay. And this was back when, maybe some years ago, right?
Oh, yeah, this is probably 2000 and maybe 18, 19.
Okay. So this has been
Yeah,
some years, and you've probably been through some things in between
yeah.
that time, and we all have. And
Hmm.
so you were just online searching for information based on the experience that you had. You had a relationship journey where you started out good, and then you went separate ways, and then he circled the block and came back and wanted to marry you, and that's what you thought would make you happy, but your emotions
Yes,
didn't match.
correct,
All
correct.
right.
And I was so conflicted, and I didn't understand. I felt scared. I felt like even though this is what I wanted, I just felt like I couldn't do it. Frozen. I felt frozen
Mm,
is a good way to
wow.
describe it. Yeah, and I couldn't understand even myself, like
Hmm.
where that came from, why I felt that way, So yeah, so
So
that's
yeah.
that's kind of how I learned
Hmm.
about it.
You became curious, and I've heard it come up in the couples and the individual therapy. So you mentioned the disorganized attachment style is the initial results that you got from your online quiz.
Yes,
So
yes.
so I'm going to go through the different styles, just a quick recap of the four main different attachment styles, and we'll kind of go into what disorganized means. When you got
Okay.
your results, that's what you got back then.
Yeah.
But there's four different styles that I'm going to go through. Number one, attachment style number one, secure attachment. It says people with this style feel comfortable with intimacy and autonomy. They have a positive self image and trust others. They communicate their needs and emotions well. So all of that falls up under the secure attachment. Sounds very nice, right?
Yes, of course. That's
Yeah.
ideal.
Wouldn't it be nice? Okay.
Of course.
Let's go into the second one, which is anxious attachment. People with this style may become very upset when separated from a loved one. They may have difficulty being comforted when reunited, and they may have a fear of being rejected. So that falls under the anxious attachment style. Number three, avoidant attachment. People with this style may downplay or dismiss their emotions. They may prefer to be independent and self reliant. They may fear intimacy and vulnerability. So that sounds like an avoidant person. We call that avoidant attachment. Finally, disorganized attachment, which you made reference to. People with this style may have unpredictable or contradictory behaviors in relationships. They may have difficulty forming secure attachments. They may have difficulty regulating their emotions.
Yeah.
So, when you got that result, I'm just curious, like, what did it feel like for you to did it feel validating in some ways, or did you get curious on how did that end up being your results at the time?
Yeah, I actually was a little surprised because it's actually like the most difficult to shift,
Mhm.
and it's the rarest attachment style, and
Okay.
it's the most conflicted. I was like, this is terrible news for me, right?
Really?
Like
So
that's
you
what
were
I
hurt by
thought.
the result? Oh
Yeah,
no.
I was like, this is very depressing. Like, how am I gonna, what am I, how do you explain this to someone else? I have this problem that's
Right.
a really big issue, you know? So I just
Right.
kind of, I didn't really feel good about it, but I was determined to get to the bottom of it
Hmm.
and to try to fix it, if you will, you
Hmm.
know, or figure out how I could at least address it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was kind of my initial response, but I got deeply curious, and I think that's what taught me as much. That's why I've learned as much as I have,
Okay.
because it just sent me on a journey to understand more, you know, more about
Right.
myself, and then ultimately more about other attachment styles and other people.
That's good. Yep. So you work
Yeah.
in healthcare, so you already kind of have that scientific background and understand and be curious to research things. So as you started to study background on your attachment style, what was your first step? Did you reach out to someone? Did you do therapy or anything like that?
It's funny. My first step was kind of reading more about it, and then I did try
Hmm.
to connect with a therapist, but my therapist was not familiar with
Okay.
attachment styles.
Really? Yeah. It's started,
Yeah,
it's been around for some decades, but not as prevalent. I think it's really just starting to catch, really people's eye
traction.
attention. Yeah. Traction.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. That's
So,
now. So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
but what have you learned about how they develop? How do these attachment
Okay.
styles develop?
Inconsistent needs being met by the parent, right? So whoever your
So early
primary
on, early
caregiver
years.
is, yes,
Hmm.
as an infant, right?
Okay.
That's where you kind of start to develop your emotional attachment. That's how you get your needs met. You learn
Hmm.
different strategies for getting your needs met.
Right. Hmm.
And whether your parent's distracted by maybe relationship issues or other life stressors,
Hmm.
or they just don't have the ability to meet your needs
Hmm.
at the time. They're not
Hmm.
attuned to your needs. So, they also describe it as like abuse and trauma, but it can be more simple than that.
Hmm.
Something as simple as, maybe if you want food and your
Hmm.
parent isn't immediately responsive to feeding you,
That's
maybe
right.
they have other things they're doing and they take, oh, you can wait, an hour, 2 hours. You're not
Hmm.
really meeting the needs in real time of
Hmm.
the child, right?
Hmm.
So you're not being aware or attuned to what their needs are.
Hmm.
That in and of itself is an example of something that parents may do, not even think about,
Yeah.
but that causes the child's needs to not be met,
Hmm.
and it can lead to a disorganized attachment because the child has to find ways to get their needs met. And if they try different strategies and it doesn't work,
Hmm.
right, it's confusing,
Yeah.
right? Or if you have an over, like if even if the parents are overreactive or maybe just reactive in general
Hmm.
emotionally,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
You don't think anything of it. Oh, you're frustrated, so you yell. Okay, well, you yell at a small child. You have to think about what that looks like. You
Hmm.
are like 4 or 5 times, 6 times the size.
Yeah.
You understand, it's intimidating, right?
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
but but the parent has to be a source of safety and connection, and sometimes they are really, really great at that. But if they also, invoke fear in the child, then that can cause disorganized attachment.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've done a little research also, and there's this the way I describe it, just a different word choices compared to what you just shared, but it's similar in the mindset of the baby that cries. I call it the baby that cries. When the baby cries and the parent responds to the need consistently, whether it's physical or emotional, they're consistent with their response. The baby essentially becomes secure attachment that we read about. And then the second scenario, the baby that cries and the parents don't show up consistently, whether it's physical or emotional needs. Depending on the disposition of that child and their circumstances, how they're wired naturally, they could become anxious when the parent is inconsistent, and they become the child that starts to go out and seek the parents' attention and just make sure that they can find them just in case they have a need, but they may not have one in that moment. It's
Right.
it's like, just in case I need you, let me
Are you
make sure
there?
you're going to be there. Are
Yeah.
you in that room? Can you
Right.
see me? That's
Hmm.
that's sort of where anxious starts to manifest. And as you can imagine, that could turn into the adult who turns, into the adult who starts probing and being very suspicious of their partner, going through their phone, going through the DMs, all of that stuff, just to make sure that there's no threats.
Right. That's true.
And then the avoidant style, the baby that cries, the parents are inconsistent. They don't meet the need consistently. So that child learns to take care of themselves. They withdraw and they figure out how to get it done on their own.
Right.
So you could see that person turning into an adult who can just disappear
Right.
after a couple of days communicating, and all of a sudden you don't hear from them for a day or two and nothing happened. No fight, nothing went wrong. They just naturally withdraw and retract into their own space. They just kind of feel comfortable just falling back.
Hmm.
And then the disorganized style, it seems like a mixture of both the anxious and the avoidant. Is that right?
Yeah, and there's definitely a sliding scale, right?
Okay.
So, right,
Uh-huh.
like you can be disorganized, but also be lean avoidant or lean anxious,
That's
depending,
right. Hmm.
right? So that does make a big difference as well.
Hmm. So, do you think other relationships can impact our attachment style as we get older? So, we starting out with the parents and caregivers role forming those secure attachments or insecure. But then you get in relationships, let's say you start dating, maybe in high school in your early 20s, and you start to see, well, I thought relationships would be a certain way romantically.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, you get the rug pulled from under you, or you get surprised and blindsided. Do you think that could impact the person's attachment style?
Yes, definitely. I think you could even be a secure attachment if you're with someone who's really dismissive.
Hmm.
That can actually make you anxious. You can
Hmm.
start leaning anxious. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
attachment styles are fluid, right?
Yeah.
So I think that different life experiences, whether it's early childhood or adult relationship,
Hmm.
those things can definitely impact your attachment style.
Hmm. And what
Mhm.
about the setting that you're in? Do you believe that a person could be one style in a professional setting, maybe, and then at home with their spouse, they could be different, or with their family members, parents, maybe they're different?
Yes, I do. I think they can, and I think it also depends on that person's attachment style too,
Okay.
right?
The other on the other end.
Yes. Can you hear
Hmm.
my dog?
Not too much. Yeah, we love dogs here though.
I hear her. She's so crazy. Yeah.
All
So,
right.
yeah. So definitely, I do think it can actually impact it. I think it depends on what the other person's attachment style is. If you have a close relationship, even a
Mhm.
friendship, as long
Yeah.
as if you are, say you have an insecure attachment style and
Mhm.
your friend has a secure attachment style and you guys end up being close, they can help you lean more secure. The same way you
Okay.
can't even in an interpersonal relationship, romantic dynamic,
Mhm.
as long as the
Mhm.
relationship is close enough. I could see that actually shifting, helping you
Yeah.
shift also.
All right. Perfect. Well, I want to share some superpowers that I discovered that each attachment style might possess. So it's, secure sounds like the one that everybody wants to be, but I don't know what the percentages are, but I don't know if a lot of people get through life with without any struggle that impacts their attachment style. So if we wanted to look at it in a different light, there are some strengths for each one that I've discovered. I just want to get your feedback on. So the superpowers for each attachment style, starting out with secure. It is uh, one benefit of being secure that it's been known for the people who are direct communicators. The secure attachment style are the ones who can be direct communicators and easy to follow in terms of understanding how they move and what what to expect from them. Would you agree or disagree when you think about this secure attachment style?
I would agree. I would think that the secure attachment style would probably have the most um, emotional stability, right?
Okay. You think so?
Right?
It could
Yeah.
be a lot of other factors that play into it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but ideally, right? In a
Ideally.
typical
Hmm.
situation, the secure attachment style would be the most balanced in their reactivity and their trust, right, with a
That's right.
partner. They would be the
Hmm.
most. They'd be the standard then.
Yeah.
They kind of
Okay.
come in more trusting, not necessarily closed off like the
Hmm.
avoidant and completely self-reliant, or distrusting like the disorganized, right? Or
That's
the
right.
anxious also who distrusts, right?
Uh-huh.
If you think
That's
about
right.
it. So the secure attachment, I think, would be coming the most trusting and
Most trusted.
balanced in their responses. And because they are secure, right,
Hmm.
they can give space to the other insecure attachment styles to navigate through their own process, their own emotions, right? So
Hmm.
if they're with an avoidant,
Hmm.
they can step back and give them appropriate space without automatically thinking the relationship is in trouble.
That's right. Very
Does that
true.
make
Very
sense,
true.
right?
That's
So
smart. Uh-huh.
yeah. So I would say the secure attachment style can definitely do that. Even with the disorganized, it may be confusing to them, but
Hmm.
the confusion doesn't necessarily destabilize them easily,
Makes perfect
right?
sense.
You
Yeah,
see?
I see where you're
So
going. I like
so I
that.
think
Uh-huh.
a secure attachment would be yeah, that would be definitely a strength that they have.
Hmm. In a perfect world, wouldn't we all be?
Ideally. Right.
Right.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Yeah, and we can work. And all of them can work towards being more secure. So that's also something to be
Yes.
encouraged by. Whatever whoever was to ever get the attachment style results, if they got something that was in the insecure category, you can work towards these things. That's what we do in therapy all day long. We're helping
Absolutely.
bring it close. The
Yes.
avoided style superpower could be that they are able to operate independently.
Mm.
Could you see that as a potential strength for someone who was considered to be avoidant?
Sure, that'd be a strength for them,
Hmm.
right? It's good
Hmm.
for them to
Yeah.
be able to act independently,
Hmm.
and they really do believe that. They really believe that they don't have as high a need for closeness,
Hmm. Hmm.
just based on how they're wired, right?
Hmm.
So them being independent and them not necessarily needing external validation,
Hmm.
I would see that as definitely a strength
Okay.
for them personally,
Right. Hmm.
and if sometimes that's why even a disorganized would be more attracted to someone who is dismissive or avoidant because of that. That
Hmm.
does seem appealing. They are emotionally controlled externally, right?
Okay.
So they can present in a very calm, balanced way, typically because they suppress their emotions.
Hmm.
So they don't necessarily emote easily, so
Yeah.
that if someone does emote easily, they can see that as, oh, this is a very calm, balanced, stable
Makes
person,
sense
right?
too. Yeah,
All
you're
right.
good. That's
So that
right.
could be a
Yep.
strength for
Hmm.
them. I would definitely say that.
I can see that. Very, very interesting. So, anxious attachment style could potentially be considered very caring and come across just genuinely kind to others.
Yes,
What do you think?
yes. I do. I think that they would be really, really good if they could just harness the energy. They can be really good
Uh-huh.
at having a secure, stable, loving situation because they're going to work through problems in a relationship. Even the anxiety
Hmm.
that they have is going to kind of keep them trying to navigate and fix and help. So they're
Yeah.
they're up for the challenge a bit just based on how they're wired because they want the attachment,
That's right.
right? So if there
Hmm.
was a secure, balanced, stable, predictable partner, I
Hmm.
mean, that could be match made in heaven. As long as they get the reassurance they need, they could be
Yeah.
fine.
See there?
That's what so I think they can be really, really good and really caring in relationships. That would be their superpower. They're very relational.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, last one, disorganized attachment style has the potential to be very resilient, just as
Mm-hmm.
a personality trait based upon some of the factors that create the disorganized style. It probably means there was some inconsistency, some things that might have happened, maybe some trauma that might have happened early on or throughout the course of their life that they had to overcome. They had to overcome something that other people didn't,
Yeah.
which could make that person resilient. Would you agree?
I would say they could be resilient. I think they'd be really good at overcompensating for the weaknesses of other people
Oh, tell me about that.
because that's what they would have had to do in order to get their needs met.
Overcompensate?
As children, yeah, so they would
Hmm.
have to basically work around whatever limitations their parents had
Wow. Yeah,
in
that's right.
order
Okay.
to get their needs met. So they'll be creative that way. They try
Hmm.
different attachment strategies. The attachment strategies that the anxious use, they
Hmm.
use those. The dismissive use, they use those.
Right.
It may not have always worked, but they know what they are.
Where you can get
And
to
they
it.
know how to try to do that. So I would say from that, and not only that, I think like when you compare disorganized. Some people like to say, well, if they're disorganized or fearful avoidant, then they might as well be avoidant. But that's not necessarily the case
Hmm.
because I think the fearful avoidant, their heart posture is different.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, because an avoidant attachment, and for them, connection is, it's not necessarily necessary for them. It's
Hmm.
something that they may not value it as highly,
Okay.
right? Just based on how they are. They feel like they don't need it,
Hmm.
really. And they really believe this, that they don't need it, right?
Right, right, right.
But a disorganized attachment partner actually deeply craves connection, really, really wants it. So
Hmm.
their heart posture is just different. It's just fear that may cause them to use avoidant strategies as coping mechanisms, right?
Gotcha.
So what they want necessarily is not necessarily the same as an
Makes
avoidant.
perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, it's very enlightening, honestly.
You're
You
welcome.
spend a lot of time, I can tell you've invested into this topic. And
Yes.
I'm want to throw one more at you, just a concept before we wrap with the different genders, how gender plays into attachments from your experience or whatever you believe, how men and women, I can imagine just society shapes us in different ways. So for men who grew up in a world where they were boys told that big boys don't cry, for
Yeah.
instance, and also for those raised by a single parent who were trying to juggle and how the majority of single parents we could say are mothers, how they could treat their sons differently from their daughters. Like all of these things kind of tie into what could create the attachment style, correct?
Sure. Absolutely.
So do you believe that men could possibly lean towards more avoidant? When you describe that, I'm starting to think that looks like the average man. And then maybe for
Actually,
women differently.
yeah, I actually do. And it's sad, right? Because yeah, I think that men are taught, boys from when they're really young, they're
Mhm.
taught to ignore and or suppress their needs.
Hmm.
Okay.
Emotional.
Emotional needs.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
because even toddlers. Oh, you're a boy. You're okay. If you scrape your knee up, you're good. When you teach someone to do that, and people don't want to have this conversation, we can have it another time. But
Yeah, we
if
will.
you think about this, you see how when even in the healthcare industry, men are less likely to go to the doctor
True.
if
Hmm.
something's wrong. They're less
Hmm.
likely to ask for help.
That's right.
Why is that? They
Hmm.
feel pain just like everyone else, like women do, right? But
Hmm.
if you're constantly told you're okay, it's not that bad, brush
Figure it
it
out.
off, figure it out,
Hmm.
you'll be fine, you're taught to suppress your own needs. So you
Hmm.
don't even acknowledge them in yourself.
Hmm. That's
Men
true.
are taught that on an emotional and physical plane.
Hmm. Hmm.
You see?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could definitely see how men can lean more avoidant, and be a man. You're a man, you'll be okay no matter what happens to you. This is the advice you're given by
Hmm.
society, other women, even your male friends.
Yeah.
Okay? If you
Yeah.
have a serious problem,
Hmm.
men don't even talk about a serious problem unless they think the person that they're talking to can help them.
Yeah. I would agree. Hmm.
Other than that, they just
What's the point? Yeah.
right. You
Hmm.
see, but do you see? Like, what do you
Uh-huh.
mean? The point is, you might need help. We're
Yeah.
interdependent here. Okay, that's why. Yes, you might
Yeah.
need help. That's
That's
why,
true.
right?
That's
You
right.
know.
Uh-huh.
But this is how they expect men to cope
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
deal with emotions. So if someone doesn't care about their own emotions, women complain about this all the time. Why would they care about yours?
Hmm. That's right. Hmm.
See? So yeah, and then for women too, women tend to lean more anxious. We're sold the fairy tales, the
Is that right?
Snow White and the Cinderella and Finding
Hmm.
Your Prince, you know. So yeah, and there's a lot of pressure on women to pair up,
That's true.
just in general. So yeah, maybe people pleasing and being clingy, all of that, right?
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that does play into the female psyche, especially here. But I do think there are exceptions to that, like in, say, African or Caribbean families, or the
Hmm.
eldest daughter of those families, or any eldest daughter can probably relate to this.
Okay.
Um, Sometimes they can also be avoidant. Why? Because they're given responsibility for the children younger than them, their siblings,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of pressure put on them to perform and to do well and not to embarrass the family.
Really?
Right?
In
Absolutely.
certain
Absolutely.
cultures. Okay.
In certain cultures, I would say African cultures and Caribbean cultures, yes, you have to do everything very well. You have to be a good student. You have to learn to cook. You have to be respectful to men. You have to, I mean, you're groomed a certain way
Really?
in those cultures, right? And you may not have, there's not a lot of coddling. You don't have a lot of time for, oh, you're so sad. What, you're stressed out. You want to leave college? No, no, you have to finish. Yeah. You see, you're like from first generation immigrants. Yeah. You have
Really?
to get this done. Yeah, because
Yeah.
we're not going to go tell the family back home that you went there and what did nothing or got pregnant.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to work. Okay, so you got to figure
Wow.
it out.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Hmm.
I
No
could
empathy.
definitely see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you've kind of opened my mind up today. Hopefully, someone will learn and just become more curious about how attachment styles can impact relationships in different walks of life, personal, business, romantic, and we'll hopefully be able to bring you back and have more discussion because you seem to be passionate about the topic and
I
just
am.
relationships in general. That's what Love's Kitchen is about, just bringing people together, different walks of life, because connectivity is so important. Community is one of my core values, and having people understand each other. None of us are the expert. We're all learning. Um, but today was very helpful. Anything else that
Yes.
you would want to share before we wrap up?
Thank you for having me. First of all,
Thank you for coming.
I am passionate about it.
Hmm.
Um, very passionate about it. I'm actually, and I think I told you this before, I don't know if you remember, I'm trying to get a certification, a level one certification to be a relationship coach, right? Not a
Yo,
therapist, but yes, definitely a coach,
level
attachment
one
coach.
relationship.
Yeah, that's what
Look at you.
that's my goal. That's my goal. So, yeah,
Congratulations early. You're gonna do
thank
wonderful
you.
there. Well,
Thank
yeah,
you.
but
Thank
yeah,
you.
we'll stay in touch because I want to hear what you learn. I'm gonna, steal from you
Of
so that
course.
I can put it in practice myself.
Right. I mean, you do it every day. You do it
Yeah,
every day. You know, they just call it something different,
that's
right?
right.
You just do it. You've been doing it. You should know you're
Yeah.
doing it, right?
Well,
So,
that's super exciting. A lot to look forward to.
yes.
So, bye for now. We'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you. Thanks for joining us, Love's Kitchen ATL. Everybody, stay safe out there.